Hi, this is Joe Rabil from Rabil Stock Research with your Daily 5. The energy sector has been correcting for several months and has recently started to show some signs of life again. What I want to do today is show some charts that have me thinking the correction may be coming to an end and this sector is getting ready for another up leg. So let's go ahead and get into this first chart. And this comes from my weekly report. What I do here is I have a short-term positive and a long-term positive. And what I'm doing is I'm going through the stocks in the large cap stocks in the energy sector. And I'm evaluating the shorter term trend and the longer term trend. When I say short term, it's really more of an intermediate term time frame that can last weeks to months. And the longer term time frame could last anywhere from months to years, actually, in some cases. But what I want to point out here is that we've got this correction taking place, and I consider it a correction because if you look at the bottom of 2020, we've made nothing but really higher lows from that point on. We have never really rolled this chart to the downside. That's just looking at the price action. I'm going to show you the XLE with my indicators in a minute. But just overall, just looks to me like a corrective pattern. But look at what's going on at these lows. The short-term indicator, which is the one that's very sensitive and can give us some pretty good signals, when that gets oversold and turns up, we can get some pretty good action to the upside in the individual stock. So what this is saying is when we get down to this very low level, in fact zero, it means that no stocks have a short to intermediate term pattern that's positive in energy. So we went through this correction to the downside and it turned down the shorter term patterns, but the longer term patterns for the most part stayed intact. Now we came back down and tested this 45 area while this is correcting down again. But again, just looking at the price action, we're still what I would consider to be in a long-term uptrend, and we've had this correction take place. The fact that we're turning up and we're only at 21% right now for the short-term positives, meaning if we go through and look at all these charts, there's still some room for these stocks to move higher. So from that standpoint, it has me very intrigued. Now, let's go ahead and look at some of the let's first look at the sector chart, and then we're going to go through a couple individual ones. So the first thing I want to point out here is look at what's taken place on the monthly. The monthly chart has had a really strong move to the upside, confirmed by both MACD and by ADX. ADX crossing back above 25, this 25 line, as this goes to a new high, is confirming the trend to the upside. Now, we've been kind of consolidating, but look what we did. We just came back down to the 18-month line. All right, we got a little bit too far away, and now it's spent some time correcting back to that area. We're also coming back to this key support area in the mid-70s, okay? So we've got that as a backdrop for us that the bigger trend is still positive, which is what I was showing you in terms of the higher bottoms on that price chart before. But we've got that in place. I think that's a big bullish sign. Now look at what happened here. We had this corrective pattern that led this back to support, but MACD actually made a lower low, but it just came back down to the zero line. So notice this lack of sellers here. We have strength in the buyers on the way up, and then really no selling strength based on the red DI on the downside. So I would view that as the potential for more upside coming. Now look at the way we've reversed here. We've bounced off the support area and we're showing some strength. I think if we can make a higher low, just come back and test this area and turn back up, that you have to have a lot of respect for what's going on here because we finally caught back up to the 18-month line. So we've spent a long time trying to work off the overbought condition, and I think we've finally done it. And we found support at that 18-month. We went sideways for a very long period. We worked the MACD back to the zero line, and we don't show any real selling strength. So this thing is in a position to get itself going again. If we can see some new momentum to the upside based on the daily ADX, I could see this starting a new trend to the upside. So let's go ahead and look at a few individual patterns. This is a very tight pattern, this Canadian Natural Resources, I think, which looks even better than the XLE and generally better than most in energy because, again, it held the 18-month. This has been making higher bottoms. This actually made a slightly lower low. But look at the strength of the ADX pattern and the fact that we're holding this 18-month line during this sideways consolidation pattern. And MACD has been hovering around the zero line, not really breaking it, but not really turning either. But look at this. No sign of real selling strength whatsoever. Now, because this has been a low ADX condition for so long, you want to wait for this to break out. It's really close to doing that. Hasn't quite done it, but it's kind of banging on the door. I think if we can get back up through the 62.5, we have to have a lot of respect for it. Now, I would love to see this pull back first and then attempt the breakout, and then we'd work off the overbought condition on the daily, and we could buy this breakout that way. The other safer way to do it is to let it break out and look to buy the first higher low. It might show up on the daily chart, but I like the momentum showing up on the daily chart, the fact that we have low ADX here and we have strong ADX on this time frame. Let's look at the Crescent Point Energy. Another one that let's start with the monthly. You look at the reversal pattern that's developed here, right? This has made a really strong move to the upside, and we've been correcting. And this one corrected back to the 18-month and has just been working sideways. But look at how the ADX line is still above 25 through this whole pattern. We've also got a pretty good look to the MACD. I know it's below its signal line, but it is making a lower low while price is making a higher low. So just overall, the condition in place, I think, is pretty solid. And then we go and look at the weekly. This is the same pattern we've been talking about. We came down and we've been hovering around the zero line with no real sign of sellers in place. Now, there's a couple different ways to look at this. Because this has overrun, you could look for a higher low to develop. You've got a low ADX condition in place, so you could just use the breakout pattern if you want. I probably would like to see a move to the upside, higher low, and then buy the breakout like that. That would be ideal if it played out that way. But I can tell you, just based on the backdrop on the monthly, you could play this crossing back above these moving averages and use this as your stop, and I think you're in a pretty safe place. Now, if you wait for this to happen, you wait for this to pull back, if it plays out that way, and then turn back up, then I think you can use a tighter stop off the daily chart, or even maybe use the weekly moving averages. But overall pattern is, I think, really attractive in the way this is setting up. Now let's look at RIG. So this one's a little bit different. There's a couple things that are going on. So number one, we're getting back above and showing some pretty good strength. And I want to focus in on not only the MACD crossing above the zero line for the first time in eons. I mean, it's been going down at least since 2013, right? And look at what else, though. Green DI has tried to make an attempt, couldn't get above 25. Got to 25 here. It just barely got above 25 and then immediately dropped back down below. Then we started to show some improvement in the green DI. And it's happened long enough where it's stayed above long enough to now, with the sellers decreasing, the ADX line is crossing not only above 25, but rising here. That's a really strong ADX condition to be in place. Now, I know I've got that in my backdrop where I've got this really strong momentum condition confirmed by both MACD and ADX. And then look at what happened on the weekly chart. We've broken out of this huge base that's formed, and now we're going through a little bit of a correction. Now, this is correcting a little bit, but we had really good confirmation for both of these indicators on the way up. So now it's just a question of when is this going to get going again? And when I look at the daily chart and the way this is set up, I would probably be waiting for this to come back up through this 7 level, something like that. And hopefully we get green confirmation, green to break out with it. But either way, I think I'd be looking for this to take out this prior peak with this big kind of red bar that was in place, if we can overcome that, I think you have to assume that this short-term trend is going to trigger back to the upside. That's going to confirm that this is holding the 18-week, and it's also going to confirm that the strength in this monthly chart is going to keep kicking into the upside. So I hope you enjoyed this segment. You can contact me through LinkedIn, Twitter, or find my research on rabilstockresearch.com. In addition, if you'd like to learn more about trend, MACD, and ADX in multiple timeframes, I have a trend and momentum course, which can be found at rabilstockresearch.com, and which delves into this subject. Have a great trading day, and we'll see you next time.